Counting down to the action. Okay.
How you doing?
Doing good, doing good, doing good. Chilling. Happy to be on the show.
I know.
Introduce me.
Okay. Let's introduce. Today, I am honored to have an exceptional guest, a man of honor.
Don't do this. Don't do this.
All right, y'all. Today I have my husband Obi on the show, and it's such a privilege to be very honest because Obi is the behind the scenes guy of this show. There's a lot of things that go well because of him, and when it doesn't go well, it's because I did not listen to him. He's always watching it, telling me things to fix, and he's very, very supportive. And he's usually the behind the camera guy, so that I was able to convince him to be in front of the camera today is a huge feat, huge feat. So, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are, you should please join me as I welcome my husband, Obiora Nkocha.
Hi everyone.
How you feeling?
Feeling good. Thanks for inviting us to the show.
How was my intro?
The intro was good. It was good.
Okay.
Anything more than that, I'd be like, oh my god.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for having us on the podcast, on YouTube, on everything.
On everything.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great. For people who don't know you, how would you introduce yourself?
Well, I will start by the introduction. I am Fopsy's husband, Obiora Nkocha. For those of you that want to know how the last name is pronounced.
Not Onwokocha or anything like that.
None of that.
Yeah.
Please don't. And I'm from the eastern part of Nigeria in West Africa. Igbo, specifically from Imo State. Other things about myself, I would say I have a grace for doing things differently, and I could probably say in everything I do, try to find a way to innovate. And so in business, in work, at home, and very spontaneous at that too, as well, in either trying to plan or doing something that is more or less recurring. So yeah, that's about my, and also I'm the creative director of Image Studio, as you all know, and good to be on the show.
Well, if you don't know what Image Studio is a multimedia studio. So Obi leads a team that helps with design for, if you're starting a business, you want to do graphic design for your logo, your website, you want to create stationery for your weddings, like he's a graphic design whiz for all things graphic design, whether it's like, physical materials or digital assets, but he's also really great with audiovisual setups. So things like lights, camera, action for your shows, all of that good stuff. Obi's your guy. So that's kind of Image Studio. And it's spelled EMAEGE Studio.
It's on the screen.
Yeah. Oh, that if you're watching.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you're from the East.
I am.
Did you have like a lot of thoughts about marrying a Yoruba girl? Like, did you even think about it in your childhood that you would marry a Yoruba girl, or like, did it come up in any way?
Well, it didn't, but as life would have it, I schooled in the West. Shout out to all the Eagles, Covenant University in the house. Woo! And spending, 5 years of my life, of my, very molding years, there was a lot of experience with the West, a little bit of history. Both my dad and my mom, they both speak the language.
Oh, that's true. They speak Yoruba.
Yeah, so my mom very, very, very well.
Yeah. She
grew up in Lagos, and so she and all her siblings grew up there. So it was kind of the unspoken language in the family, where we lived in an environment where we had one or two people that were from the West, and so those casual conversations will always happen. So in some way, I wouldn't attribute myself being strange to the culture.
It's like you felt your parents did not seem that foreign, even though you weren't Yoruba.
Yes, it wasn't. I would say 2 out of every 5 friends that we had as a family were from the West, Ogun State, Osun State,
okay.
Ibadan. We had the woman that sold stuff on the streets, all the Pepe, Rodo parties as well. We are always, geared to take care of that culture from the West. So we weren't estranged at all. So it was good. And then going to school, spending for 5 years, all my roommates for the first 2.5 years, like being four in a room. For those of you that know how the hostel life was,
Yeah.
I was the only Igbo guy in like an entire floor of like 40 guys. It's like 80-90% of everybody there was Yoruba. Your lecturers, your staff, admin, everybody in that environment. It was like you were immersed in the culture. So all the bowing down, all the greeting was, and so it wasn't strange to already know what the culture
was like.
And then in terms of dating too, I think my first official girlfriend was from the West as well. So
you always had Yoruba. Okay.
Yeah, so very, very used to the culture. For the language, I didn't really pick it up, but there were just some slangs that you could pick here and there, because even the roommates I had did not do much in terms of speaking, but they would speak when they're together, and then they would automatically switch to something else, English, to speak to me. Yeah.
So that's very interesting that you were very exposed to your rap culture, whether from your family
side of things,
and also from school. But I remember when we started dating, one of the questions was the home for. Anyways, when I told someone about I was dating, I think we're getting serious at the time. So I remember telling her about it, and she was like, "Oh, do your parents know he's Igbo?" Just that kind of conversation. And I hadn't thought too much about it before then, but then it just raised the flag in my head that could that be a potential issue? Do you recall any conversations with your parents saying don't marry a Yoruba person or anything like that?
Yeah, I think this one comes to me clear. One Sunday afternoon, we were leaving church, and for those of you that know Port Harcourt, my church was in Woji, and we were at a junction, and for some reason there was this. I can't remember the root of the conversation, but I can remember this phrase where my mom was saying, that she was blessing, because we're all boys in my family. There's one above me, and one other man now, so we're all men now. Okay, so and essentially she was saying she was blessing us that wherever we found a wife to bring home, that she would accept it. It could have just been a random conversation in the car. But I think over the years, I've just seen that even with friends, my parents were always very open doors to accept the friends that we bring. Because I think they had the expectation that any friend that we had the opportunity to bring at home, they were not just random people. They are people that we've had some good relationship with.
Yeah.
So I can remember a certain time during my internship. It was a 6 months internship. I had a friend, we're working in the South together, and my mom ran a restaurant. And one after that, I can't remember what we were doing, but we were in the same environment. I was like, oh, my mom's restaurant is here. Let me just introduce you. And you could see the way she welcomed, this is like you're bringing a female person to your mom's business. It was very, warm and nice. So over the years, there had never been a thing where it was like, oh, don't talk to folks that are not from the same tribe.
Oh, I see.
And for me, my defense was, I've seen, mom and dad and uncles and aunties that married from literally the same environment or village or culture, or maybe 2 or 3 villages, and there wasn't anything as special to it. They still had their issues, and it was even deeper than what we thought. And I had friends that had their mom and dad from 2 different, maybe one was Igbo and one was maybe Delta or something else. But you could see that they grew up and together. They kind of loved themselves. So for me, I just felt like it's Nigeria. Everywhere I find somebody
is the same.
We should be good.
Yeah, very interesting answer, and to see that you've always kind of been open about it. For me, I would say that it was I always imagined I would marry a Yoruba person, just because sometimes I just block things out in Yoruba. I don't know, it just comes out, and I just figured it would be easier to not have to explain or translate them. In fact, sometimes I'll say something, and when Obi doesn't understand what I'm saying, he'll just say, maybe I'll say, oh my god, or say, oh my god to you too, or something, something like that. Yeah, exactly. So he does things like that, like, and that's kind of the practicality of what it's like in marriage. For we speak English most of the time. Who doesn't even really speak Igbo? I speak Yoruba, but I've been in Canada for so long that I mean I still speak pretty good Yoruba. Let's leave it like that. And my parents, whenever they call, they just go on Yoruba. In fact, Obi now, I think Obi has situational understanding of Yoruba in the sense that like you can kind of deduce what they're trying to say. And my mom will be so wild, like Otigbo, or like he understands or something like that. And I'm like, mommy, he doesn't really understand. It's just, but it's just picking things together. Keywords. So like all in all, we've been married for 3.5-ish years, 4 year this year, and we did. It hasn't been like a big thing, like culture melding. Only when we speak Yoruba and I'm like, mommy, translate. It's like, sorry, Muti, and then she'll translate, and it's never like malicious or anything. So the things that were important for us are honestly just being able to vibe together. Then the core values that I'm always talking about on this channel that you can go and find, all of that, just having that together. But in everyday life, it hasn't been like a thing that has changed how we live together. In fact, it's made it a bit more interesting because we cook things from each other's side of things. I think he's now a fan of Babula, so I'm very proud of the Ibadan girl in me. Is very excited about that.
It's good food. Like, I love any type of food as long as it's cooked well, and I always say with love. Yeah. If it's cooked with love, no matter how small it is,
home cooked food lands different.
It just makes you feel good.
Yeah. This week we went out and it was just like, anyways, different. You talked about friends a little bit, but let's actually just move into it. Growing up, did you have like a lot of friends? What was life in school like? And do you feel like anything in your friendships growing up kind of shaped you or anything like that?
It did. And I'll try and break this out in phases. So one phase would be the primary school, elementary school phase, and then one would be the secondary school / high school, and then the university phase, and then post-university phase. So in primary school, I did a lot of drawing by hand, so pencil, paper, and drawing. And most younger kids at that time in the neighborhood, all they wanted to do was play soccer. And not me being the person that I was good with my hands. I could do stuff, I could mold, I could paint, but my legs would never control the ball. So nobody wanted to pick me as a kid on their team. So you know how kids back in the 80s kids, I'm dating myself now, 90s kid.
80s kid.
90s kids. Back then it was all about like soccer. So once you're done with school, you take off your uniform. Or even wearing uniform, there's a FIFA held size 5 in your bag. You're already bringing out to play.
Yeah.
No kid wanted me on their team. So I've always been the other one they would tease. Yeah. Plus, I was on the heavier side.
Oh, as well, chubby
as well. So kids will, always tease and make fun. But for some reason, it never got to me as I saw some other kids that were kind of withdraw from the group. I would, watch them play, and I would draw them playing. Like my books, like my books in school, at the back page would be lots of drawing, and my teachers would always, want to report me to my dad. And thank God for kind of the family that we grew up. Yes, he was scold and say, how about you get a drawing book and draw them, not on your school books? Pushing on, 5-6 years in primary school, getting into secondary school was a whole different ball game. This was when, by the time we were in JS1, JS2, cell phones started to come in. So the whole atmosphere changed. Everybody wanted to be hip. Everybody wanted to be high. Everybody wanted to have a girlfriend. Everybody wanted to dress the way it was going. It was different for me. I was just the easy going. Let's just go to school, do what we need to do. I tried doing sports, and even up to now, sports is still not on my thing. I tried joining, soccer. I tried joining stuff, but it never worked out. One thing I started noticing that I had an interest in the arts. I had an interest in music. I had an interest in how music was made, or what makes an event look good. And so yes. And so at some point I joined the band. You know how like all the high school would have a school band.
Yeah.
But I was good at it, but I felt I could lead the band because at some point they didn't have a band leader. So I picked it up. I learned all the, like the snare drum, the bass drum, the recorder was the hardest one. But being in that position as someone that could just take initiative to lead the band helped me. Academics wise, in school, friends were always, like let's go out, let's do this. That wasn't my vibe, but I tried. I wanted to belong. I think that's I tried to belong, but it didn't flow. And so it's one of those things where once you do that, you've tried something and it's not your nature. You just switch to something else.
Yeah.
And for me, I just switched to being like, you know what? I'm going to be the nerd kid. I'm going to just do what is required of me in school. And having done that for like the first 3 years of school, and then going towards the last 3 years of school where you now have to pick the university you want to go to, it was nice, like, you're either a school person or you're so friends. I naturally don't join friends.
Okay.
Is if I find that you're doing something that I like, I'll be part of it. If I don't, like, friends don't typically influence me. But then fast forward to university days, oh my God, it was a different ball game. It was expectations upon everybody wanted to be the top tier, like A plus class. And so there was this drive to always be on top of your game, like A's. If you're not hitting A's, it's like nobody wanted to be your friend. And so like, A became like the cool thing. Right. But then I also found that I also still grew more interest in organizing stuff. And so I found myself on the student council by second year, wrote it out for 3 years, head of social events. So a lot of my influence was not even coming from my close friends. It was more on those that were already ahead of me that always reach out and say, hey man, I think you'll be a good fit for this, staff position in school, student council position. And I did that all the way. And I found that kind of just became my lifestyle. Every environment I enter, within a few weeks or so, somebody just sees me and begins to point out some values. And I'm like, okay, if the opportunity is available, I'll do it. So in terms of friends, I've kept good friends. There's something about having friends that stick to you, like friends that no matter what, 10 years down the line, even if you haven't spoken with them in weeks, when you pick up that phone and you call them, they will respond. And I've grown to really appreciate the friendships that I've built. I've had friends that, like even till today, we grew up like street by street. Even when we chat on Instagram or on WhatsApp, it's like, man, like we've known each other forever. So I think I've been like a very self-driven, not too influenced.
Right.
I've had some good times and bad times, but it's been awesome knowing that I knew who I was from a very young age. Like,
I think
you can't be like every person. So know yourself and then just roll in that.
Good. Yeah. That's super deep, and like thank you for taking us and me through the journey. Like you've said so much. So going back to being younger, you'd expect that if somebody was kind of isolated from activities that all the kids did, they would probably feel some type of way about it. But it's almost like maybe self-confidence was an innate thing. Innate meaning that it was just inside of you. Nobody had to kind of drill it into you.
Yeah.
Because like for some people that could have led to some maybe withdrawing from people or like not feeling some type of way about it. Going into adulthood, would you say that the background you had and having a mind of your own and not necessarily being driven by what people think or feel about you, did that shape your decision, your pace of doing things? For example, did you feel pressured into getting into relationships when everybody's getting into it, or like have you always just continued with that mind of my own and I'm going to do things when I'm ready mindset?
Yeah.
And was it similar with your friends, if you would say?
I would honestly attribute this to my dad. He was always the person to multitask with a lot of things at the same time. Like he had a career in a popular oil company back then, and even on the home front, like we always say, like when dad is in the kitchen, like we are all looking forward to what comes out from the pot.
Oh, your dad used to cook?
He loves to cook.
Okay.
He loves to, so probably kind of where I got
your love for cooking.
Got the love for. But my mom too was, a caterer, was a chef, as well. She ran a restaurant, for years, and so just being in that environment. But specifically to your question, I think where the confidence and the self-knowing thing came from was for a good portion of my life. It was just myself and my brother, right? So we're 3 years apart, and then 9 years after, we have a third born into the home. So there's a lot of space. And so with 3 years ahead of me, he would always be ahead in terms of school. And so he went to boarding school, leaving me alone with the house. And when I mean the house, with everything in the house. So when it comes to handling domestic issues, my experience was built from the ground up. Paying bills, going to the NEPA office, paying for, like dealing with the trash, paying for the being, going to the market
as a child,
learning how to drive. By the time I was 15, 16 by myself, with multiple crashes with the car. I tried to fix it with my pocket for money so that my dad would not know, even though like he would always you find out. And so there was a lot of independence at a point. By the time I was 16, I didn't get into university, with my sets. So it was almost like after 3 years.
Do you know why that was?
So that was basically because there was a system called JAM. It was a Joint Admission Matriculation Board. That you had to write the exam, pass, and then pass with a level of like a cut-off mark. Probably would discuss it more, but for me, getting an admission did not happen right off.
Were you good with school?
I was good with school. My last, from the time I was in SS2 to SS3, I was first, and I have proof. So I won't be one of those dads that will say I was first and it was a lie. I actually have proof. I have proof. If we go back to the family files, I have proof of the position. Not because the class I was full of all dull people, but they were all smart as well. These are guys that have all grown. They are all over the world now doing amazing stuff. And so 3 years being at home and trying to understand why I wasn't getting into school and indulging in so many things, like things that should not have been done, or things that should have been done, and just trying to identify. I think those 3 years for me was kind of a very life molding season for me, because I tried everything. I tried to please everybody, but it wasn't working.
So when you say indulging in things, like was it like vices? Was it your wild years, or
wasn't actually vices? It was like good stuff, like trying to join the band in church or the choir. But then it will be like, okay, now you're spending too much time on the drums in church, and you should be reading for the next jam year, or you should be trying to do something. I got enrolled in all the computer stuff that you could ever do. And I think, now in retrospect, those things molded me, because my first experience with like using a computer system officially was one of those, like I think my first year, where everybody got admission. I would say everybody, like a good portion of my classmates got admissions. I did not. And so there was this very popular computer IT firm. They're called NIIT. They had a blue. They were popular. They were new. So they did a scholarship. I wrote the exam, I passed, I got offered the scholarship. So they paid for my fees for the first 1 month. I did everything that had to do with like painting and Microsoft Word. So I started seeing that I had the flair for graphics. I had the flair to use the computer very well. And so my dad was, okay, since you're good at this, how about we take it to the next level? Then it was Java, right? So
was it before CorelDRAW?
It was, I think they were all within the same time. So it was, those years actually just molded me to take responsibility. Back in my church, in my youth church, they gave me responsibilities, even things that nobody said they would do, I would do. I remember one time, we literally, if you've ever, I joined the guys that were building the church to make cement.
Wow.
To buy cement, buy sand. I started knowing the calculations on some of those things just as a young person, because it was like you're that one child where you are the black child that everybody liked, but I felt they didn't really like, because
do you mean black sheep?
Black sheep, black child. You were everywhere. I was everywhere. I was in choir. I would clean the church. I would be in the marketplace. I would be everywhere. I would take care of. I would teach in the children's churches. I was everywhere. I was trying everything. But what now happened was at the end of those 3 years, when I finally got my admission, it was like God was saying, now you're ready because you've shaved off
The childhood.
the childhood, the doubts, the fear. I knew who I was. I could now speak. I stutter. Most of you wouldn't know, but in 3 years, in those 3 years, I was in positions where I had to speak with a lot of youth, with a lot of teens. It gave me the bonus. There was a time I took a bunch of our kids to a camp. The staff member aside, she just wanted to have fun. But for 5 days, making sure that all the kids ate on time, all the kids were dressed, coming out of that experience and then getting my admission, it was like, it's time to take you to where you're meant to be. So getting into Convert University was like piece of cake. Like I knew what it was. I was able to like, oh my God, you've never left the house. How would you survive? Why are you going so far from home?
Right.
I was always a day kid. Every other child in my environment was boarding.
Yeah.
But when it was time to leave home, it was like, how would he survive?
Yeah.
But then I already knew how to do it because I did it
For
in
so
my
long.
secret place. Yeah.
I think it's such an interesting story, and I mean, I'm your wife. I've heard some of the stories.
So you're here for the first time.
I heard some of it before, but like it's also kind of nice to contextualize your life. Like you would not have chosen those 3 years of staying at home.
No, not by chance.
Yeah, but somehow they were formative to helping you to develop a sense of your own, like who am I and what do I want to do and things like that. So very interesting how God orders our steps in some ways. But like, so for most people, they're for most Ajabo kids, which is like the English would be, most people are sheltered.
Kids
Actually,
born with a golden spoon.
I don't even know if I would say most, but I assume that a lot of my listeners are a bit of sheltered people in the sense that, they grew up with parents, went to primary school, secondary school, maybe boarding, and bam, Canada or US or UK after. Like, where is that formation happening for most people? And this can be more of a discussion and less of, for you alone. Because I'm asking you to say, when we have, as a preface, before this conversation this afternoon, we were watching Steve Harvey. Obi is a huge fan of Steve Harvey.
Huge fan.
And
Hi, Mr. Harvey.
if you're watching this, that would be an honor. Hello, sir. Yesterday or the day before, I was talking to Obi about this idea that women are sometimes saying men don't feel ready to commit and like are saying that they don't have enough money or enough something to commit yet. And then he was watching this show that Steve Harvey just happens to be answering a question about a young woman who they were engaged, and 7 months later they were doing like premarital counseling. Good on them. And after one of the sessions, he said that he doesn't. I don't know what his exact words were like. That
he's called cold feet.
Yeah, he's not proceeding with the marriage. That he doesn't think he's ready to proceed with marriage, something like that. And then she's like very confused that she's bought her dress, they booked the venue, they paid for the venue, all of that, and why is it just happening now? And that he said he's not proceeding with the marriage, but he keeps calling her, and she's like, okay, what is going on? And at first, so Obi had watched it, and he said, because I was in bed, and he said, oh, come and watch this and everything. So I watched it, and I'm like, I was first of all getting like agitated. Like, essentially, the end of the story goes, Steve Harvey empathized with the man and said, it was definitely just probably feeling like he was not in a space yet to commit like that. And I bring that back to, you seem to have had like a season where you just were able to hash out some of your own personal doubts and all of that. Yeah. And for me, I'm a firstborn. That comes with like, I'm like the third mother in the family. Like I've always been on top of myself, on top of things. Like it's just how I am. So like I will not have cold feet 7 months after. It's just not something that would happen to me. But I'm bringing this back to where do you feel like people are having these moments of coming into themselves so that you're not having children getting into relationships? I mean, you guys know I love relationships, and this podcast was primarily about relationships before I start having guests and to just opening things up more. But like, where is growing up happening? Where is this transition from adulthood from childhood to adulthood happening for people? Or is it missing? Because the young women keep saying, where are all the men, or where are the people getting to the men? But in listening to your story, I feel like you came into your own in those 3 years.
Yeah.
But you have other guy friends. Perhaps you remember some of their stories as well. Like, where is this maturing happening, or is it missing?
It's definitely taking place, but in different forms and in different phases. So I'll speak about myself and maybe some ideas that I saw, or some things I saw from some friends of mine that were close. So for myself, yes, those 3 years really formed a lot of my thought, where I knew that, or I had experience by experience, right? That you're responsible for a huge portion of your outcomes. And so if you don't sit down to get your ideas together before you go out there, like, if you don't get it done in the closet, in the secret place, when you're outside, the winds of life can toss you back and forth. Like, you're not sure what your yeses are, what your nos are, where your boundaries are. I know boundaries are a huge topic in this at my age. You're not sure what even your faith is. So a lot of us grew up with the faith of our parents. A lot of us grew up with the strength of, my mom and dad are walking in this life. So most likely by the time I'm close to being an adult, I will take over from them. That did not happen for me. And so it was, for every phase of life, there was something to learn. And one thing I would say at this point is, and it could be a mantra for a lot of people, but for me, there's always like a test for a phase. And if you don't pass that test, it's going to be moved to the next phase with you, meaning you're going to be taking more stuff on yourself. But when you pass that test, but you overcome, it could be a fear, it could just be doubt, or there's an information you're meant to get at a certain point in time for school, for business, for relationship. You need it to get to the next phase, because the next phase already has issues of its own. And so when you say like friends, the molding time, I think I found a number of my friends that the situations of life actually force them, and I think it happens to every one of us. A good example that I have a personal experience is the loss of a parent. When you lose in some way a parent, whether they be the person that brings in the most of the income, or the parent that's always there, there's a kick for you to get responsible. And if you don't grab it at that point, you find out that when it comes to making the tough life decisions, you will always depend on others. And the truth is, there are some decisions that we as young, folk, you need to make on your own. So I found out that I had a number of friends, unfortunately, that they lose a dad or a mom while we're in school, and you could see that, after like a season of tears and of getting themselves together, there was a different drive. They changed the way they looked around. They were open to change. They were able to love more. They were focused. That's one. Other things that could shape you are just the opportunities of life. I had a classmate at the time where she had the chance to get kind of like an internship to the States. Back then, I think it was something sponsored by Shell. And I think that experience alone, when she went and came back, you could feel that maybe she was probably exposed to something else. So something that she felt like was never in her came out. So you could see that she was now very more outspoken.
I see.
She could carry herself a little bit more. This was someone that she was already doing that, but I think there was something else that came alive
Inside of
in
her.
her. And multiple of that. And I will not say this and not mention faith.
Mm.
For me too, that was a major one. Having to understand that my faith wasn't the faith of my mom and dad. It wasn't the faith of my church. It had to be my own faith that will lead me through the issues of life. And so going through, church is like an institution where some people just go through. But when it becomes part of you, then you start seeing that you should not just leave it to going to church or attending church. You should make sure that church or what you're preaching affects. And I have a lot of friends, a lot of friends that now when I look at them, I just see that from when they started from school, they came in contact with faith. They came in contact with the Word of God, and it changed their life. And what they are doing now is in life. My wife is shaking her because she knows I can mention 5, 10 of them right now. Lots of them are pastors, full-time pastors, and they are doing amazing things. That is a motive, and those happened not by chance, but that they were in the environment where things could shape them. I went to, as I said, I went to Cornell University. The environment, allowed for a stirring up of gifts.
Yeah.
And I put that in a way that, gifts. A lot of us have gifts that are lying dormant, and life would not make sense until you begin to stir those gifts up. And I see lots of friends that I still have up to today. Those 3-4 years stir them up to your gifts. Gifts in business, gifts in starting companies, gifts in doing the impossible. And so I think it's in phases. And for kids that are growing up, or you're a parent and you're saying, how do I expose my kids to something? Is as much as you're giving them a guided hand, let them be exposed to the right, spaces. Kids learn by seeing things and seeing how things are done, but they will always want to try things out. So I think it's the trying out. But if you don't let your kids try things out, it doesn't build what they've seen in them.
It's almost like theory versus practice.
Exactly. People needed to test things out. Like for me, I tested my faith. And I was saying this in response because after school, there's if you're Nigerian, and I think some other countries have a version of it. It's called the National Youth Service Corps. It's a 1-year program, so to speak. It's a national program funded by the government where you get posted to a divergent zone of the country. So because I schooled in the West and I'm from the East, and I lived in the South. Look at that. I was posted to the North. So I have a good experience of the 4 continents of the country. So in the North, the reason I brought this up is I wanted to test consciously my faith, my resolve that why do I do the things I do? Was it because I was in a Christian university where there was a red hand or a heavy hand to hit you down if you went wrong? Or my parents, were the strong hands? And after like the first 2-3 months, I realized something had built in me that it would be difficult for you to misbehave. You will have peace.
Because you went to the North?
So because I was in a place where I knew nobody. I could do whatever I wanted to do. I could live the way I wanted to live. I could express my innermost needs or wants the way I wanted to do. But where there was no instruction, where there was no father or mother or a chaplaincy to check you out, you would think you would have the freedom. But then it dawned on me that something had changed on the inside. I was still the same person that, regardless of the not having a witness, I will still stand by the things that I hold dear. And things like serving. I served with the NCCF youth group for a year. Same thing. Someone saw me on campus and said, "Hey, I think you would be a good lead to serve for your batch C for 1 year." And that was it. A quick 5 minutes talk on campground. I served for 1 year. I taught as well kids, did a lot of community outreach work that I just felt helped me to know that yes, even in a empty or no man's land, I still would be myself.
Right.
And I think a lot of us need, adventures, like that. I call it adventure because it tested my faith. There was nobody to force me to pray. My home church was not there. I mean, it was there, but it was far away. Everybody I met was new, so nobody knew my background, and I could have taken a new form.
Right.
I have shown a different outlook.
Yeah.
But the me that came from home and came from the school that I went to, that graduated, with a bang, I knew that look, I had to maintain that and always show it for them. So it will always happen if you go on adventures.
So very, very thorough answer. So thank you. So basically, for you, yes, those 3 years were shaping.
Yeah.
Loss also shaped you.
Plus,
Kind of forced circumstances. So basically, just the everyday of life, but like things that you don't necessarily plan for can also be part of shaping you. And then opportunities / experiences. Opportunities being like, things you're thrown into, but also things that, like you just explained, the NYC experience can be formative. So essentially, more young people should be, well, there's the natural part where you have life happening. So you're growing, whether or not you like it. Well, if you embrace the challenges, you're growing. But we can also grow and mature even more by stepping out into opportunities that present themselves. Some uncomfortable situations that they shape you. And I don't pray loss on anyone, but it does change.
It does
change you and how you are. And then faith. And I think that's one big one where sometimes it feels like for people who truly immerse themselves in the things of God, there's always a difference in that. Well, it's the service, first of all, like being used to serving so much, the discipline that comes from serving from certain under certain people, you will learn from them by force because you're serving with them. And then the transformation that comes if you're really devoted to faith, in the sense that you're spending time with the Word of God, you're being changed. So like I see that, and I wouldn't have thought of this answer. So thank you for sharing all those insights. So basically, if you're feeling like you're not growing as a young person, these are some things to really think through. Essentially, some things to think through, as in how to embrace life and all that is happening, and as well as going deeper in your faith to grow. So profound and so deep. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. As I was going through some of those things, like I always tell you that there are pockets of memory that open up, and so it's like even what we're doing right now, it's putting a little bit of a pressure, not on me, but on my mind to open up, to go find experiences and things that I went through. And a lot of them were amazing times during those experiences. It felt like this is too much of hard work, but looking back now, it is the best exercise to my mental health, the best exercise to just me being whole as a person. Where at a certain point, and I felt I could, live by myself. Maybe like not like without any other person, but just I felt whole, where I had command and grace to handle things within my space, not depending on the approval of a parent or approval of friends. What will my friends say? That for me died a long time ago. Like it died a long time because all the choices that I made from almost like high school was, I would sit with myself, and I used to tell my wife, I can play events in my head, repeat them so much that if you watch like Doctor Strange, that's kind of how this whole thing is. It's like I will play out a multiverse of events, right? And ask myself, if this happened like this, how will your response be? If this happens, like how will your response be? And it could be a healthy thing. I think it could also be a very unhealthy thing as well. But for me, I think I've used it on the healthier side of things, where I would play out all this multiverse of different scenarios and be prepared for them when things come. Things like going for interviews, things like going to ask somebody out, things like, buying your first car, or just being prepared to take on a new life, like packing your bags, leaving your family behind, and traveling thousands of
Oh my God. Speaking of which,
miles to a new country where we knew nobody. And so, and I know that a lot of young men, speaking to my guys here, a lot of us or had that same experience where we packed our bags, one backpack and one traveling bag. We got a ticket and we said, adios, like see you guys later. And 5-10 years later, we've not looked back. So that was like, how would you carry yourself? How would you prove yourself in a new place where nobody knew you? What would show is your gifts. What would show is the phases of life that you formed to be yourself. You can't, fake yourself for too long. People will figure you out, right? And so what you're used to would always show. You always get drawn to. I think folks that struggle with addiction in any sphere, in any grade, with substance, drugs, any stuff. You find that there's always a tendency to be drawn to it. You go finding it out. Similar thing with your person. You go begin to find people that you source them out.
That's so deep.
You source them out. So
it's almost like you're attracting who you are.
You attract who you are.
Yeah.
You attract the kind of environment that is already inside. Which is why people would appear in a country as we are new. One person will be drawn to vices and unhealthy stuff. Someone other person will be drawn to a community where they're able to nurture them and grow them, and they become shining stars. So it's always no one is inside because it attracts. It attracts from the environment.
That is so deep. Oh, we are busting brain.
You guys can do that.
Snap your fingers. Okay, so what brought you to Canada? How did you decide to come to Canada? And how did you find your feet in this country?
Canada. All right. So 2014, the story it is so sweet. It is so good. I come back from the NYC program 1 year.
Yeah.
And, of course, the next step was to job search, writing exams, writing all of that. And we weren't seeing the fruits of what we were doing. There was nothing to show for it. From it, went, visited a number of companies, traveled, but nothing. So I made a clear decision with my dad and mom and said, I am done with the job search. I'm going to start my business. I'm going to make money, because at the end of the day I'm getting a job to make money so that I don't have to come to you to always ask for the money. And so over the years, I built myself, experience in graphics. And so I was doing that and I was making money. And so I was actually being able to contribute to a fraction of what the house would need, like buying gas, just helping out with one or two, not because I had to, just because I wanted to show that I could do it. And so the next conversation was, my dad was saying, look, the money is there. If you can get an admission like my brother did, we will sponsor your master program anywhere. It could be Australia, US, UK, anywhere. Canada was not mentioned in that conversation. Mm-hmm. And so he had a friend that had recently moved to Australia for about a year plus. So he was the one that we were kind of as like a source, going back and forth and saying, how are schools. I also started doing my own check and my own research, but something wasn't pushing me to Australia. And so I decided, everybody was UK or Australia, UK, Australia. We had maybe one or two people that decided, okay, let's even try somewhere else. People were, in my time, going to the US. And so within a span of 2 months, I applied. I got a response. I got an admission offer. I applied for my visa the first time. It was denied.
Oh yeah.
No shade to CIC, but thanks to the environment and the community where we was I was able to reach out actually where I was working. And so it's very important to know that wherever you are, there's always a blessing around you. The I would say my immediate boss at the time was, I never knew she was she was a verified Canadian immigration consultant in some way. And so when I said, hey, I applied to school, I got an offer, but I applied for the visa and I was rejected. She went ballistic. She was, oh my God, you got admission to this school, we're getting you that visa. And so my next few weeks at work was, so just leave the work, come into the office, show me all the documents that you sent in. And then she went through them and told me the other documents I could tell my dad to get. And so we did that in a very short time. Within a month, we applied. I got the visa. There was no turning back at that point. There was admission, there was visa, and to be very candid, the funds in some way were available to an extent. So it was just taking that step. And I can remember this conversation very well where my dad was saying, everything is available now. He wants me to go and not to think about home, not to think about like what is going on in Nigeria. I should just go. My mom was like, go and never come back. Just go, go and never come back. Because I guess it was because they have seen so much of work that I put in my life. Like, okay, you spent 3 years before getting your admission.
Yeah.
Then you got the admission, you got into a good course, you graduated with a good result. Then you went into a far land where nobody was there to take care of you. You survived by yourself. Then you come back, no job. So it was like, you know what?
Okay.
This time around,
so more like go and prosper.
So I think there was a blessing that was sent ahead of me, and so I bought my flight ticket. I got a house before I landed here in Canada. I did my research.
Yeah,
I got someone to pick me up from the airport. Luckily for me, the house address to my school was maybe like a 5 or 10 minutes work. From the first day, August 31st, I got into Canada 2015. It's been one step of grace to that. And a lot of them came with making the right choice, right decision at the right time.
So you left Nigeria because
School.
of looking for work.
Well, it was a part to say school and then work.
Like was it primarily for the masters?
It was primarily for the masters.
Okay.
Because there were certain folks or establishment then that said, if you go do your masters in this field, we will be welcoming you back to the country as as a professional, as an expatriate, studied abroad and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But knowing, just the foresight of my mom and dad at that time, knowing that look, it wasn't going to be just the way these guys have said it. So get the education for yourself and not because someone has promised you a job.
These things. Very interesting. So, man, I know you're very passionate about young people who leave their country and like come and make a life of their own here. Because it's a very brave thing to do. Like many of us come here as international students, which is also brave because you're even young and you come to a new country.
Yeah.
But in some ways, you're still sheltered by the support of your family. But then when you now totally step out on your own and come without cover, not that you run away from home, but like that you come to make a life of your own.
Yeah.
And it's you have to grind and make a whole new life here. So it's almost like you're empathetic towards them and feel like let's do whatever we can to help these people to also make a life in this new country. So if you just had to look around today to young men, what would you say to young men in who haven't decided to get married yet and who are still trying to find their feet in Canada? 'Cause I know you feel passionate about Canada as well, but you told me don't go talk to all the people in Nigeria. Let's focus on people that are here.
Oh yeah, I would say, to every young man that I meet here as well, at any age, if you've left your home country, and by home country, wherever you're Nigerian, you're Ghanaian, you're African, South Asian, everywhere you're coming from, I believe you have a responsibility to shape the future generation. And I say this, because if you've moved here, if your intention is not to settle here, and your intention is to move back to your home country, that's absolutely fine if that's something that is your drive. But if you're planning to build something because you've gone to school here, you're looking for a job here, you're looking to start building family, building wealth, or just building something of your own, a business, a startup, then you should realize that there are some choices and decisions you need to make now to shape the future that you're looking for. If you're looking to have kids, then you need to start knowing that, like, you want to make not just the provision for their future, but to contribute to the environment that they're going to live in. What that means is, as immigrants, as we are here, is the issues and the roadblocks that we face at the early stage, or at any stage that when you came into, you want to be able to solve some of those issues. One of the issues that we faced at some point was immigration and getting jobs that kind of met the experience and the education that we had at the time. Nowadays, thank God for all the amazing groups out there that are doing specifically that. They have solved that need for the younger generation. I see younger guys nowadays, and ladies as well, getting amazing jobs, right? Even doing their internship right out of school. That is a game changer for us. And so whatever you can do to contribute to that, smoothness of integration, it will be a value added to your generation. So to young guys, making decisions on time and being firm, knowing that it is your decision, not something that someone else has coerced you to do, or they're paying you to do. You have to be sure, be certain. I've met a couple friends here that, just decided they're going to move out from Ontario to Alberta to somewhere, or go to the US. And so I'm sure they had some time to think about it. It was a calculated decision for both themselves, their family, and the kind of the future that they wanted as well. So if you're not thinking of, especially in a country where everything seems to be, laid out, but if you're not in tune with the wave of how things work, you'll be left out. And so you always have to be making the decisions on a day-to-day how you want your future to be.
So good. Thank you. I wanted to end on a hopefully funner one. I don't know. What's the best part of marriage?
I think the best part of marriage is actually that coming together, having someone to share life with. And I mean life with in the sense of waking up to a rainy day or a sunny day, planning trips together, building together, helping somebody review their resume, having conversations that are just fun, or just watching TV, or even doing like serious work in planning a budget on how to buy a house, or wedding planning, and having kids and where they will go to school, or grocery shopping. Just having someone that is yours, different from a sibling. Having someone that is yours, that you can say, let's go out together, and you're not in some way trying to package yourself. You can be yourself with this person and just enjoy life.
Yeah, I initially was going to, very, very insightful to hear your perspective.
Thank you.
I initially was going to do a whole video on the best parts of marriage, so I actually had thought about it a bit more myself.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it's like the emotional support and encouragement is the biggest part.
Oh yeah.
It's just life can be a bit intense, and I just feel like it's very nice to just have someone that gets it, the backstory, and you don't have to like catch them up as much. And it's inbuilt, and it's inbuilt for the whole journey, and it's really nice. But This has been so insightful.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your life. Thank you for being generous
Woo.
with your tips, your advice. It's been very much appreciated. I hope the people love it as much. Looking to the future, what should we look out for from you? Is there anything you're looking forward to in the near future, or just anything like that?
Well, I guess more of this as we
You
journey
want to have
through.
more conversations
As
with
we
me?
journey through this, maybe we could pair. We could have, some of our closer friends come in as well. We could hear some other men perspective as well, and then they could answer some of the questions I've answered, and you can kind of see that there's probably going to be a trend of how people form their values and people form who they are, and all the adventures that a lot of young men did at their younger age, and now most of them are fathers and daddies and husbands, and they're doing well in their job. So more conversations with more friends, and
Well, thank you so much, Obi. This has been so great. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
It's not easy to get, even though we live together, it's not easy at all. So I really do appreciate this.
Awesome.
Thank you for
your
time.
Well, thank you, by Fopsy. I hope you guys continue to listen to Dear Fopsy.
So keep listening and definitely subscribe if you haven't already. If you've watched and listened up to this point, it means you enjoy it. You enjoy these kinds of conversations. Definitely hit me up on YouTube with comments on what you enjoyed about this episode. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, rate us, give us a 5 out of 5, and share your comments on how things went. Until next time, this is Dear Fopsy. We look forward to having even more engaging conversations in the future. It's been great having you today, Obi.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.